This is the third demonstration video of my Los Angeles class 688I improved version, the third phase of the Los Angeles class series of submarines for the U.S. Navy. Now I've reconfigured the ballast system to snorkel. Now the first two videos dealt with the pressure hull configuration where the model would essentially compress air inside as it took on ballast water. In this case, as ballast water is taken on, the snorkel will vent the atmosphere from the ballast chamber. So there will be no compressing of air inside. It is easier on the pump this way and easier on the battery, plus the submarine will stay stable at the depth that it's set for. Now I've set it up so that the ballast tank fills up almost exactly halfway, the main ballast tank in the center of the hull, and when it does, it's fully submerged. Only the top of the sail breaks the water. And there's a little surprise I found when I tested this out, so I'm going to demonstrate it starting now. So first thing to do is start pumping on ballast water. Going full power with the pump. The bow is sinking lower into the water as the stern raises and the hull levels out. Now the snorkel exits through the top of the sail. So when it's full, the snorkel will spout water. And there it goes, spouting away. Now, here's a little surprise that I found, is that the pump is so powerful it pushes more water in, and the bow ballast tank is a Sullivan RST-6 fuel tank, which is slightly expandable, so more water is pumped into the system, which eventually gets squeezed out, and then the submarine stabilizes at this depth, which is the top of the sail is just barely above the water, maybe 1/4 of an inch. So here was the surprise. I'm going to back the sub up a little bit. Oops. There's a lot more power going forward than going backwards. So I only need a short burst to stabilize it. Okay, now I'm going to pump in more ballast water again and watch that water squirt out of the top of the sail. There it goes. Now it's actually, the ballast water is acting as a jet, keeping the submarine on the bottom. And once that extra water in the forward ballast tank squeezes out, the submarine starts to rise again, very slowly. This was the surprising part. I assumed that once I went below the surface of the water that I would be unable to take on air by the snorkel. But this is a welcome result here. Fairly interesting. The submarine has bobbed back up to the surface and is stabilized at about 1/4 of an inch of depth. It's just kind of wavering up and down. Now the neat thing is, the controls are at neutral right now. I'm hands off. Actually, I'm going to sink the sub again, submerge, and then I'm going to step away from the controls here, and you can watch what happens. Now, like I said, I have the snorkel outflow set so that the ballast tank fills up about halfway. If it filled up any more than that, it would stay submerged. So I've got right now about the maximum depth that I want, and we're going to watch for that to stabilize right there. Now I wouldn't set it this deep. I would actually, the way this works is the vent pipe is coming through the top of the ballast tank. I've put a 90-degree bend on the tubing, and then I have a piece of silicone tubing going straight down from that point. And that tubing is about a ½ an inch long, which puts the mouth of the tubing at halfway up the ballast tank. So right now, if I was going to sail this in a pond, I would want to make the mouth of that intake go a little deeper so that less water was taken into the ballast tank, because I don't think I'd want the boat swamped by the ripples of the pond. I'd want to be able to take in ballast air when I want to, like this. So I've just taken on a little bit. Due to surface tension and a change of balance as some of the ballast water emptied out of the central tank, the bow has gotten a little bit heavier, but notice he just kind of stabilizes there. So you can actually set your depth. Now, this is interesting because you can actually set the depth you want to be at by taking on or expelling a certain amount of ballast water. So I'm going to take on a little bit of ballast water, just a little bit. Whoops, wrong way. All right, so right there, it's running with about 1 inch of the sail out of the water. It's still rocking back and forth a bit as it stabilizes in the calm water. Looks like about 1/4 of an inch of the rudder's out of the water, and approximately 1 inch of the sail. So I'm going to take on a little bit more ballast water, just a tad. And once the surface tension released the rudder, the hull actually leveled out a little bit more than it was. Plus we have a little bit more weight in the center of the ship, so the more weight that gets pumped into the ballast chamber, the more level the hull sits in the water. All right, now I'm going to take on a little bit more, just to... All right, I can see water coming out of the top of the sail at this point. So this is the maximum amount of water that I would want to take on using the snorkel system. I don't want to sink the boat accidentally. At this buoyancy level, it'd be really easy to dive too steeply and stick the bow in the mud. You'd have to go in the water and get the boat then. With a little bit more buoyancy, you're more likely to come up if there's any kind of radio malfunction or anything like that. So I'm going to pump some water out. I'm going to go full surface now. Now the neat thing about the snorkel system is once the bow ballast tank empties, it'll start pumping air out of the intake tube, and you could just keep doing that if you're amused by looking at bubbles. I am. There it is. Since air is being taken in through the ballast tube at the top, you don't have to worry about expelling too much air from the hull, because that simply won't happen. The only place that air is being expelled from is the ballast tank itself. The ballast tank is sealed off from the rest of the submarine. So all the watertight spaces and airtight spaces are intact, and they're not getting any water incursion at all, nor are they losing any of their internal air. And in this system, the air inside is not being compressed. It's just being, it's static. The air in the equipment chamber in the rear and the battery chamber in the front is just remaining static. The auxiliary ballast chamber, the second chamber from the forward position, is sealed off and static. So only the central ballast chamber is vented. So well, anyway, the rest of the sub stays isolated from the ballast chambers. Okay, so let's go down. I've got full ballast pump intake going. The hull has leveled itself out. Bow and stern are even. It always amazes me, the bow submerges first and always seems to come up first. Alright, there's our snorkel spouting water. We're completely underwater here. And actually there's a disturbance on the top of the water. You can see the jet of snorkel water hitting the surface and causing a disturbance. Now I'm going to let it go. Now this is the first time I've run this generation of submarine with the snorkel, and I'm quite amazed by how it's behaving. Using the snorkel, it seems like you could go subsurface, have a good time cruising around, and even if you pump in a little bit too much water seemingly, as long as you've preset your ballast vent in the right position so that it doesn't take in too much water, it seems that you can completely submerge and it will resurface to whatever preset condition you have it at. So it looks like we're stabilizing at between 1/8 of an inch and 1/4 of an inch of the sail being out of the water, which is great because that snorkel vent is at the top up there. It's about 1 inch behind this bumpy protrusion, about right here. And I love the way this looks, so I'm going to take the radio out of the way, play with this for a little bit. Submerge. Now, this is kind of fun because I had no idea I'd be able to do this with the snorkel system. So I am quite surprised and amazed. So I actually am using the snorkel vent as a kind of a jet to keep myself underwater. Looks like I might even be able to hold stable. Look at that. It's a lot more stable than I could hold it with the pressurized system. Now, here's the deal. The pressure hull system is what I would recommend for any beginner using this submarine because you're guaranteed to recover your submarine. As you gain more skill, you want to operate more precisely, then the snorkel system is better for that. So as you're more advanced in your submarining skill level, having a snorkel sub will enable you to stay at a pretty constant depth underwater. I mean, look at that. Can't be that stable with the other system, with the pressure hull system. I am enjoying this. The only downside is, in order to take on air and empty the ballast chamber of water, I have to get the sail above the surface. So in a pond, you would have to drive it to the surface if you got stuck a little too far down. But I'm deliberately keeping the sub down at this depth. This is quite amazing. I'm enjoying myself tremendously here. I can almost station keep. All right. Well, this is a lot of fun. Okay, I'm going to surface. Now the ballast pump is in its own isolated chamber and it's blowing air out through the drive shaft of the pump. Now I put it in an isolated chamber so that it would not empty out critical air from inside the sub. But after each voyage in the water, the ballast tank hatch needs to be opened and vented of any water that might have gotten into it. That's more critical when you have the pressure hull. The pressure hull actually puts pressure on the water pump and squirts water through that leaky shaft into the chamber that it sits in, so you have to empty it out. Not very much water, thankfully, but some. And I was kind of surprised to see the air bubbles here, but that means that if some air is getting out of the isolated ballast pump chamber, then some water must be getting in to take its place. So it will just be standard procedure to open up the fourth hatch from the front, take it off, and drain out any water that accumulates. So every time you take out the battery or turn it off, you also need to empty out the ballast chamber. Okay, one more time. I'm going to submerge. Bow goes down, stern comes up slightly. And now the bow is going under. Stern is going under. And there's the snorkel tube venting. See that water disturbance? I love that it can just hold me on the bottom. As long as I want to run that pump, I've got a jet facing straight up that's going to hold me down. Now I'm going to let it stabilize. Okay, now I'm getting a little worried. It's staying on the bottom. Alright, this is the danger of having a snorkel system. Is now I would need to drive the submarine to the surface in order to take on some air. So that little bit of water coming in through the ballast pump might have taken on, or might have given me just enough extra weight to negate my buoyancy. Oh, would you look at that? Broke surface again. Now, I don't understand exactly how that's working, but it seems like I've gotten positive buoyancy again by expelling ballast water. Of course, we would have taken in ballast water, but maybe that power of the pump is rushing so much water out so quickly that it gave me positive buoyancy for a second. Let's find out. Okay, I seem to be sitting on the bottom again. So, yes, there it is. It's settled down. So, I'm going to have to lengthen that snorkel vent tube just a bit so that I don't have this issue. But here we go. I'm going to pump out ballast water. Here we go. And woohoo! Look at that. You could actually hear the snorkel sucking in air as it breached the surface. Okay, that's one of the unpredictable things about running a submarine. There's always a little push and pull from Mother Nature, from physics. And I'm pretty sure there's a reason why the submarine stayed on the bottom, although I'm not sure what it is. Personally, I'm going to extend my snorkel vent just a little bit and add a little extra buoyancy to the sub. I have no doubt after seeing all this that I'll still be able to get it to submerge quite nicely. So that's the end of this demonstration. of the Snorkel system in the Los Angeles class 688I improved submarine model.